Welcome to the Rockabye Revenue Podcast with me, Abby Watson. I'm a mum of four and a business strategist, and I train people to become hypnobirthing teachers. In the last decade, I've built a thriving baby business that grew beyond my wildest dreams. This podcast is for you if you run a business or dream of running a business in the birth and baby industry. You want to change lives whilst making more money. I'm talking about creating sustainable income whilst being present for the people that matter most. I believe for our baby businesses to have the impact we desire, we must be rewarded. On this podcast, expect me to share actionable strategies without the jargon. I've been where you are. I've built a business while raising four little ones, and now I'm here to help you turn your passion into profit while creating the life you've always dreamed of. So let's get started. Hello, lovely one. Welcome to another episode of Rockabye Revenue. Or maybe this is your first time here. And if it is, welcome. I hope you enjoy it, and I hope you go back and watch some or listen to some other episodes. So I am here. It's half term when I am recording this. It is absolutely scorching, which is very odd for me in West Yorkshire. I must say, it is literally 31 degrees outside. Now, no doubt by the time you listen to this episode in a week or so, we'll have been plummeted back into freezing cold temperatures, won't we? That's the way it works. But today is scorching. So yes, if I pause for lots of drinks, that's why. If you're watching on YouTube and I'm looking a little bit glossy, it's sweat, I'm hot. And it's why I've got a bit of a different background today, because I am not sitting near the window. That is like a sauna. Anyway, let's get on with today's episode. I am talking about visibility today, as in getting seen, getting known by people that we want to become clients. But firstly, I want to talk about how actually I am recording this in half term, and quite often I would do everything before half term and think, actually, I don't want to have any work to do over the school holidays because I want to be really present with my kids. And of course, that is the case to an extent this half term. However, I have really learned that when I do that, when I prepare so that I can just have the school holidays completely free of any work, sometimes I miss it. Sometimes I'm not actually as present with my kids because I haven't had that outlet for something for me. So this time I thought, right, I'm planning a day where I am coming to my office. As you might know, if you listen to this podcast, I've recently got an office away from home, primarily because it's near my son's school that is 50 minutes away from our house. So it was to kind of navigate that difficult situation of all the travelling. But actually, it's proven to be just such a useful thing for me to get out of the house and do my work elsewhere. So yeah, I pre-planned that this Tuesday in the holidays I would be heading to the office. And I knew if it wasn't pre-planned, I'd not chatted about it to my husband. I'd not made sure he's having the day off. I'd not blocked it out in my calendar. It just wouldn't happen. It wouldn't. I'd get tempted by some other plan. Some friend would be like, oh, do you fancy coming here with the kids? And I'd be like, yeah, totally not prioritizing the thing that actually is important to me and actually recharges me in many ways. I also know that I am a person that absolutely thrives on consistency. If I've been out of the loop with something, I find it really hard to get back into it. And I definitely found that after, sorry if there was a weird alarm in the background, I've got all the windows open because it's hot. I found that happened after Easter. So I had a lovely 2 weeks where I didn't do much work at all. I didn't step foot in my office for a whole 2 weeks. And when I came back to working, I just found myself a bit like, I don't know, a bit demotivated, a bit like, oh gosh, where do I start? A bit overwhelmed. And I know that happens to me when I haven't been consistently doing something. So, I'm a busy mum. I've got 4 kids. I want to be a present mum. I enjoy a lot of time at home. I do. I enjoy a lot of downtime, if I'm honest. But I have really realised that I need an element of consistency, even when I'm experiencing that, even when I'm wanting to have all the benefits of being present, So, that's going to be my plan going forward for school holidays, that I don't just kind of think, right, I'm packing up, because this isn't a job that I don't like. It's not a job I need a break from. Actually, it's a job that re-energizes me, and that's important in my role as a mother too. So the reason I'm sharing that with you today is, really have a think about what works for you best. So often when we run a business, we almost go into employee mindset, and we think, gosh, if we were an employee, we'd love all that time off over the holidays. But actually, maybe if it's your own business, maybe you feel a bit different about it. And actually, maybe something else would suit you more, And this is the thing, when you run your business, it's your rules. But sometimes we still get swept up in what we think we should do, or what everybody else is doing, or what we dreamt about when we were stuck in an employed job, So I'm inviting you today, as you listen to this podcast, to think about what's right for you, what makes you thrive, what's best for you in the long term. And that, might be about having time out from your business, or it might be other things, other things within your business. What things are you doing just because you feel you should, but actually isn't doing you any favours long term? And I also wanted to talk about this because today, as we talk about visibility, consistency absolutely does come into this. And not just consistency from a person's watching perspective, but for us, I know that if I want to be visible in my business, for me personally, I am better off doing it consistently, or the fear kicks in. If I have a huge break from doing something, it's harder for me to get back to it. And that absolutely has been the case in terms of visibility in my business. So as I said, we're talking about, getting seen. And I don't mean sharing on social media some lovely posts that you've created on Canva with fancy graphics. What I'm talking about here, when I'm talking about visibility, is you as the business owner, as the person that your clients work with personally, whether that's in person, whether that's online, whether it's even in a pre-recorded kind of situation, you are the person that they're getting when they book your incredible service. Getting visible as you before that, when they are prospective clients. Because what I know to be so true is that the more people feel that they can get to know you, the more likely they are to book you. And probably, even more powerful than that, if someone feels that they know you, they like you, they trust you, they are not going to be comparing what you offer to the other hypnobirthing teacher down the street or the other baby massage instructor down the road. They're not gonna think that they're getting like for like with you in comparison to somebody else who offers your service, because they get you and they want you, but they can only feel that if you've allowed them to get to know you a little, you know? And the more we get comfortable doing that as business owners, my goodness, the greater the impact we're going to have. Now, I listened to an Amy Porterfield podcast a few weeks ago, and she was talking about this topic, but she was talking about it from a perspective of, if we want to, get easy bookings in whatever business we are in, we need to have really developed trust in those people that are thinking of booking. And I totally agree, we do. And she talked about how every time we show up and are visible, we are seen by that potential client, we're almost banking in their trust bucket. We're adding, to their trust account. And the more that's in their trust account, the more likely they are to take the plunge. And isn't that so true? There's some people out there that, we may follow on social media, or we may read their blog or listen to their podcast or whatever it may be, watch them on YouTube, whatever. And if they offered a service, we'd be so likely to book that, because we don't have to think about, is that person who she says she is? Is she going to be good at it? Am I going to like her? Am I going to feel at ease with her? Because actually, we've been developing this trust for so long. I mean, this ultimately is how influencers operate, isn't it? They're sharing content all the time. Therefore, people, develop that trust, that know, like, and trust factor with them. Therefore, like, when they offer, this lovely candle or whatever, people are biting their hand off for it because they trust what they say, because they know them. They feel like they're almost their friend, They trust their word like they would their friend from work, Now, hear me when I say this. I am not for one moment saying you need to be as visible as an influencer. You need to be posting the same type of content as an influencer. Absolutely not. You don't need to be, okay? But we can learn from influencers how they do allow us into their lives a little bit. They're careful with what they share. I'm sure they don't share every element of their life, but they allow us to get to know them a little bit, because that's what builds trust. Now, I'm talking about very much, where we are in time right now, in a huge time of social media and influencers and all that kind of thing. But this same concept has been happening for hundreds of years. Like, if you think about how somebody will have shopped 50 years ago, they probably didn't compare, loads of different prices and, go to the cheapest place. They probably showed up at the same butchers every single week, the same bakers every single week, the same grocery store every single week. And that's because they knew it there, they liked it, and they trusted the people that were offering those products. And maybe when they were in that shop, they'd have a little chit chat, wouldn't they, with the greengrocer, and they'd be asking about their kids and, how's your Amy? They'd be having these little conversations that developed that relationship. That's almost what we're doing when we are being visible. Now, the biggest mistake so many people make when it comes to being visible in the baby industry, so maybe you're a hypnobirthing teacher, maybe you're a doula, maybe you're maybe you're a sleep consultant. They show up feeling like every single thing they post, they share, they put out there into the world has to be of value. all the time. You know, I have to be teaching people something. I have to be sharing what I offer all the time. You know, let's think about, back to my example from 50 years ago, that'd be a bit like going into the grocery store and the person that works there just sharing facts about oranges all the time. Do you know these oranges are the juiciest oranges in the world? You know, just constantly sharing facts and offers, when actually that human connection often comes from the more like everyday things. You know, we must remember that in our own visibility too. Like, we want to connect with these potential customers, these potential clients as fellow human beings. And actually, that means we don't always have to be posting about our wonderful knowledge we have about our topic area. Actually, sometimes we can just talk about something random in our lives. You know, we can share what we've been up to that day. We can share a beautiful story from one of our past clients. We can share these more human things, because actually people are going to develop a deeper connection with us, and we're going to be adding more into their trust bank by doing that kind of thing. So recently, I have been challenging myself to be more visible as me. Now, if you are someone that has followed me for a very long time, you'll know that probably about 4 years ago and before that, I was a lot more visible as me than I am today, I would say. I'd say this like podcast is probably, you know, the one place that I'm really consistently building connections and, you know, being me. But beyond that, I'm not doing it as much as I used to do. So I'm not showing up on social media. I'm not, you know, doing lives like I used to do so frequently. You know, I'm not posting as many photos of myself and my life. And I think there's a number of things that have impacted that for sure. And definitely personal life circumstances have absolutely played a part in that. And, you know, sometimes not having almost like the emotional bandwidth to do that. But I tell you what has made the biggest difference. The cycle of not doing it and then feeling scared and then not doing it ultimately. That's why I've stopped doing it. You know, I stopped for a bit, got scared, didn't do it, got more scared, you know, and I've almost been stuck in this cycle. And, you know, probably then, like, random fears have come up that, you know, the same fears that I had early on in terms of getting visible in the first place. Like, oh, what are people going to think about my accent? Or, you know, am I going to say something stupid? You know, what about like, oh my gosh, if people think I'm fat? Or all these kind of thoughts and fears that go through our minds when we are wanting to do something that makes us feel very much like on show and on display. So all those fears that I had in the early days have absolutely come back to the surface. And, you know, I really want to share that with you, because I think it's really easy to look at other people that have got successful businesses, have been doing things a long time, and think that they're like immune from the fear. And it's absolutely not true. You know, I have definitely had that huge fear. I've also really overcomplicated visibility, like thinking, oh my gosh, like from what kind of things should I be talking about as a hypnobirthing teacher trainer? Should I even be talking about birth, or should it be more about the business side? And just overthinking it so much that it means that I'm just not doing it. You know, the more we procrastinate, the less we blooming do. And that's where I have been stuck for quite some time. So I set myself a challenge and I was like, I want to get back into this. And I know I thrive with consistency. If I get back on the wagon, if I get back doing it regularly, it will become a routine, it'll become a habit. A lot of those fears will like drift away. But I knew that I could do with like a bit of accountability, a bit of like something to actually make me do it, even on days where I wanted to hide. So what I thought about my community. You know, I've got an amazing community of hypnobirthing teachers that have graduated and those that are still training. And all of them can absolutely benefit from being more visible as them, as the business owner. So I thought, well, I'm going to make it a challenge for our community. So that's what I did. And that has absolutely given me the kick up the bum. How can I be leading that if I'm not doing it? So that has been the biggest kick up the bum that I really needed. And I knew actually the timing for this challenge was not ideal. Half term, I'm going to Center Parcs at the weekend, you know, lots of things going on that could be excuses to not do it. But actually I thought, no, it's not about picking the perfect time to really get your teeth stuck into it. You know, if I want to be consistently visible, I need to be able to do it during challenging times too. So actually now is ideal, you know, now is perfect. So I'm only halfway in, but I have been consistently showing up. I've not been talking on video every day, no, but I have been showing more of me, showing more of my life, talking, you know, sharing more of my words, not overthinking things. And it has been so powerful. The impact, more than anything, and this is the impact I really wanted, was I'm no longer overthinking it quite as much. I'm knowing that every time I'm being visible, I am depositing in people's trust banks. And, you know, when I'm thinking about depositing, it takes the pressure off because it's one deposit out of many deposits, you know? So it doesn't have to be perfect. I don't need to like convince anyone of anything in my visibility. It's just about showing up and building those connections. So the biggest impact has been that I'm not overthinking it quite as much. I'm getting more comfortable with it. But also, there absolutely has been more conversations in my inbox, more general chat. And I know it's that general chat that is evidence of that connection that absolutely is so powerful. So as you're listening to this today, I want you to be really honest with yourself. How visible are you being? How much are you showing up in your business as you? You know, not just sharing things that you feel you should be sharing, but allowing yourself to be you, you know, the person behind what you offer, because you are what makes your business unique. You are your USP. You are why people book your service, and you are why people send their friends to it. And the more you allow yourself to show up as that lovely, caring person that you are, the more people will know that, you know? The more people will remember that. And ultimately, the impact on your business will be huge. So how much are you being visible as you, you know? And rather than thinking about, you know, views, likes, comments, instead, really thinking about, actually, I just want to get comfortable being seen. We can get so interrupted by focusing on all the metrics like likes and comments and all that kind of stuff, views, when the reality is, like, you could be a business that gets, you know, on average 2 likes every time you post and have a diary full of clients. And you could be someone who gets, you know, thousands of interactions, you know, hundreds of likes, but haven't got the bookings. You know, the likes, the views don't necessarily translate to bookings. When there's not that know, like and trust factor, is it going to lead to the bookings, you know? And if, like me, you are someone that does need to build those habits, does need to get back into that consistent frame, maybe run a challenge yourself, you know? You could simply just challenge yourself, or you could get together with, 3 other business owners and say, should we do a bit of a visibility challenge? And each of you set a challenge each day for the next couple of weeks, Like that might be the accountability that you need. Now, I've been using 3 weeks of prompts that I created for the people in my community. And I tell you what, having that list of prompts has absolutely taken the overthinking out of it. If I just challenge myself to show up every day on social media, I'd be like, right, I need to be visible. What shall I talk about today? And that, what shall I talk about? What shall I focus on? Would take so much of my headspace, so much of my time. But with this list of challenges, it's taken a lot of that out of it. Now, if you're in our community, you're a Love Your Birth trainee or graduate, you'll have access to that list of 21 prompts. If you haven't trained with us and you're not in our community and you're a hypnobirthing teacher, feel free to pop over to my Instagram at loveyourbirth_training and ask for it, and I'll send it over for you, because I really do believe that just having that little bit of guidance, that little bit of structure is so powerful for taking away that overthinking. And when I was creating these challenges, I was really careful to put a mix in there of different challenges. Not all like educational ones. So they're not all like teach about the fear, tension, pain cycle, or they're not all like share a great fact about vaginas. They're not things like that. There are a few days where you are sharing knowledge, absolutely, but there's a lot of more random ones, like share something that you enjoy watching on TV and talk about it. These randomer ones, because it's that humanness, like I said earlier, that helps people connect. And I really hope that those people who've participated in this challenge, including myself, experiencing this challenge, this real, confidence that comes from knowing, that you can share things that might not be directly linked to what you offer. You can be more you, just like you would be on your courses. If I think about my days as a hypnobirthing teacher, I wouldn't walk into a client's house and be like, right, let's get straight on. Let's talk about hypnobirthing and giving birth. Of course not. I'd be like, oh, how's your week been? Gosh, isn't it hot? I'd be talking about general things. I'd be like, oh my gosh, I love your clock. If I actually did love their clock, So even within our roles, we are not necessarily just delivering information and facts. So we can also do that in our marketing. Be more you. Be more you, because that is your blooming superpower. And I know you might have objections for me to saying that. You might be like, well, it's okay for you, Abby. Like I said, I feel the fear as well. I do. I massively feel the fear. Of course, I think about all the other random people that might see me being visible and might judge me or think I'm silly or, say stuff wrong. Of course I do. But it's more important to me that actually I get the success that I deserve, and you deserve that too. You do. So whilst, yes, of course you'll have feelings of like, oh gosh, who am I to talk about this? What if this happens? What if that happens? What if nobody's interested? Those fears can never be as important as the power of being visible. Think of the people's lives you will change when they hear about you and book your services. Think about your own life and what a successful business brings to you and your family. You know, that matters more than those silly fears that are just there to keep us in our box, you know? So I really hope something has resonated from this episode. As always, I love to hear what you think of this podcast. And I love, of course, when you drop me a review. So if you haven't yet dropped me a review, please do so. It really, really does matter for a podcast like this because it helps the algorithm send it to more people. So please, please, please do that. Or share it on your social media. Or let me know what things like really landed with you. It keeps me motivated as I'm producing these episodes every single week. So please do share. And as always, lovely one, keep on changing lives. See you next time. Bye. Thank you for listening to Rockabye Revenue. I hope this episode has left you with some fresh ideas and bundles of motivation. If you enjoyed this episode, do make sure you click subscribe so you never miss an installment. And if you found this episode useful, I'd love you forever if you leave a 5-star review, helping this podcast reach the ears of more of the helpers in this world. And remember, keep changing lives. See you next time.